Board.
Moved as written.
Second. Any changes or updates?
Yeah, there was one minor, but instead of saying RFP, we had RFP under item G.
What page?
Fourth page.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other changes?
Thank you.
Seeing none. They have been moved. They were seconded by
Jeff Kelly.
Jeff. All right. All in favor of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. You did?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Minutes are adopted. Next up, we have public comments. Any public or comments? Please tell us who you are before you start.
Kristen Cooney, and I just wanted to read a little something that I wrote. So, living in a small town, I try not to be the girl who makes a fuss. I know that it takes a village to raise a child, and there are many people in this room who are first and foremost my village. They are the reason I am here in this town and also here today. Many of them have already listened or read my thoughts on this topic. In the midst of our conversations, you are my friends, colleagues, and peers, and whether we agreed or not, you encouraged me to be here today and step up and say that I am willing to join boards or create change in our village with my experience and knowledge base. I am a mom of 3 children here at Deerfield Community School. I am also a social studies teacher with 16 years of experience in high school and college education. I will reiterate some of my concerns that I have already discussed with some of you here today. In the midst of our current global situation, it's imperative that some of the reasoning and rationale why we have been chosen the path of social distancing in a pandemic, how and why we can and should vote in upcoming elections, and lastly, why we are at a point in our history for a civil rights reckoning. These are not topics that are in the curriculum, but would be part of a natural conversation with a social studies teacher who has the knowledge base and the background to give nuanced and impartial information to curious students on these topics. Social studies is not just one unit or just history. Social studies teachers are certified to teach U.S. history, European and Western history, non-Western history, U.S. government, comparative government, economics, world geography, anthropology, psychology, and sociology. Redistributing this content to teachers without this background is not a solution that as a parent or teacher I feel is a responsible one at this point in our history. Teachers in every district are overworked. They are unsure how and if we will return to school in the fall. Adding social studies training or professional development is not another thing we should be adding to the plates of our middle school teachers who will have to go back and reteach some of the skills that may have been hard to convey in a remote learning situation. This is too much to ask, and it is not a decision that should be asked. We will be judged by future generations about how we acted or didn't at this point in the United States. I trust my village to make the right decisions for our children in our school. This whole speech invokes my right to freedom of speech and my civic responsibility. That is social studies. If we want our children to be in the room where it happens, we have to teach them that they are part of something bigger than themselves. As Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. Let's give our kids access to a full and hearty education, including the core of social studies, with certified teachers who are well versed in the subject and not just make it a byline. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kristen. Any other public comments? Tina?
I just want to add, I'm going to be eloquent, but I would like to add that I am concerned about not having actual dedicated social studies teachers. We will have the subject taught. I just am concerned about not having a social studies teacher teaching it, and I hope that tonight's presentation sheds light on that. And I mean, I'm going to give it a chance, obviously, no choice, but I'm concerned.
Any other, I'm not seeing any other comments, I don't think, but anybody else? Speak as a citizen? Okay, agenda review, we have to go into non-public tonight to discuss a couple of items, correct?
Yes, I'm small letter C.
Under C. And do you have any, I know there's one consent item?
There is.
Okay, that'll be dealt with after.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us.
Can I
Oh, yes.
offer a change? Or ask for one, request one? Can we have an informational, perhaps before J,
Okay.
between I and J?
We'll get that back on the agenda, back in person, it got missed.
All right, anything else? All right, Mr. Motika, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and hello to everyone. It's good to actually be near people, although not that near. So it's nice to see you all, and I hope that that the presentation I give tonight is can allay some of those fears that were expressed by our community members, and also recognize that there are a lot of pieces at play, and so the presentation that I'll be giving this evening is really, it's about more than just that. So there's a lot of things that are working together, a lot of elements within a school that function that we've been working on as an administrative team with the SAU office and things like that. So we're going to try and bring all that stuff together, but it's not just about the middle school, although that is certainly a component that we'll speak to tonight. So here are our objectives. We're going to update the board on the progress of competency-based ed and what we've been doing through CRB and a little bit outside of CRB with some pilots that we're going to be looking into. We're going to introduce Concord High School's new grading scale, and we're going to talk about how that fits in with our work. We've kind of got an inside scoop over there. And so we were able to kind of see where they were headed and have conversations around that as a school. We're going to talk about the middle school team and the progress that they've been making on redesign. We will take an in-depth look at student perception data. This comes all the way from back in like January. We surveyed all the middle school students to get their perceptions about some teacher concerns, and we get to hear their concerns as well, which I think will ultimately play into that redesign piece we'll discuss. And then we're going to bring it all together. So with our competency work this year, I think it's really important to know that competencies are never done. People often talk about things and say, well, didn't we write those? Aren't they done? Didn't we finish that? Well, yeah. But there's this kind of reciprocal effect where we go out and after we've created competencies, we teach them. We look at them, we're really thoughtful, and we reflect on them. And then as we gain assessment data, as we look at student results, as we talk to kids and see what's happening, it kind of trickles back into a redesign. So I think that's always a really important thing to bring up, that this work is not done. And that it's always changing. So it's really kind of cyclical in that manner. This year, the PE curriculum was up for redesign, and both Mark Ruest and Jazz, what's her last name?
Lance.
It's still Lance, okay. Screw that one up. And Jazz, they both did a great job in really retooling their PE curriculum. They've taken everything that the school has done in terms of templates and formats, and they've redesigned everything, and they really have a comprehensive PE curriculum. One thing that they did change was they didn't focus in on the actual sports that they play or the activities that they do, and this is really important because we don't necessarily teach kids basketball. We teach them two-sided games. That's the national standard, that's the skill. We don't teach them how to play baseball or softball, we teach them how to throw across their body. So they've really retooled so that they're not focusing in on the game or the sport, but the skills themselves. And I think that's a really neat distinction, and I'm really proud of them for the work that they've done. That work is going to be I'll be working on those tomorrow, getting those updated and sent off to Alma so that they can have that in the system and ready to go for day one next year. Two, we have writing competencies. This came up at the very end of the year in our, I think it was either late May or early June meeting. And it had come up previously for discussion. One thing that the middle school teachers have found is that students in their writing, there's no way to help pinpoint the things that they're struggling with because there hadn't been a conventions competency. There was never anything where they could say or put into a grade and say, hey, you need to focus here. You're not quite competent yet. And so we've been working on that, and we met with the ELA team, the content team, and we focused specifically on writing. Now the middle school team is ready to go, and so what we're going to do is, instead of adding yet another competency, ELA right now already has about 8 competencies, which is far more than we should have in the content area. They've instead of adding another one just for writing conventions, what we're going to do is we're going to embed that into reading and writing at the grade level, or at the word level is the way that they put it. So we're working on that. That's something that the middle school will pilot, and what we'll do is we'll bring in that discussion back to CRB in the fall and get the elementary either on board or make tweaks and changes as needed. But suffice to say, the work, the discussions have happened, and the team is really confident that they need this. Because they want to help improve writing. They want to be able to pinpoint those skills where students are struggling. Social studies curriculum, I'll probably end up talking about this again in a little bit, but what we want to do right now is when it comes to the social studies curriculum, we've been using themes as competencies. So in essence, we've had a competency called conflict and cooperation. We want to shift that because you can't really be competent in conflict and cooperation. We want to move to the national model or the C3 model. So where we have history, civics, geography, and economics. We want to use those 4, and we'll embed the knowledge of social studies, knowledge, process, and skills, which is across the board. It's basically your focus on primary and secondary sources. So that's going to be embedded in your competencies. But we want to make sure as we make this shift, well, let me put it this way. We can teach conflict and cooperation through economics. We can teach that theme through geography or history, and certainly civics and government as well. So we want to really focus in on those domains, if you will, as opposed to a theme. The themes will be taught. The themes are going to be the vehicles whereby students will meet those goals and become competent in those different areas. But I think suffice to say, we're really trying right now to model after that national model and really have those 4 domains as our curriculum. And last, and this is really in a preliminary phase, we've started to have discussions around our calculation method, and this is SAU-wide. Particularly when COVID happened and trying to figure out how are we best communicating grades, and remembering that grading is about communication. It's about informing students how they're doing to help them improve or to celebrate their success. Likewise, the parents for the same reasons. And so we're trying to figure out what the best method is to calculate that. We've looked at things like power law and mode and mean and all of these different things. And DCS is fine right now in terms of a method, but what we're trying to do is be able to get a little more granular. So in ALMA, when you put in assignments, you can put those in at not just a competency level, like a big umbrella level, but you can go to a smaller level, a more granular level with a standard. This is what 3 of our schools do right now, and they're really able to pinpoint some of those things. But we're not ready to go there in Deerfield because that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to make things more complicated in terms of what parents see on a report card. And what we're trying to do is get ALMA to be able to take those grades and roll them up into a competency. So that's more informational. I just want you guys to be aware that that's a discussion that's really at a high level and it's really just beginning. So FYI. I think it's pretty cool stuff, and it's pretty important because we feed to Concord, and Concord's been making some moves of their own. In particular, they're moving to a 4-point scale, much like ours. That's a big deal. It's tough for high schools to do. They are rounding to the 10th decimal, so they're still averaging, they're still rounding. We go just to the whole number, if you will, because we use letters or words. So we don't have that decimal, and I could see in my discussions with their assistant superintendent and some of their administrators, I see them moving in that direction to be more aligned with what we do. And they're grading kids by competency and not by class, which means, for example, if you are in a social studies class or a science class, you could grade a student based on their writing, right? Because they write in social studies, they write in science. It might be different. It might be informational writing on a lab report, or it might be, an exegetical paper in a history class or a perspective paper. But it's not just about the English teacher grading writing. It's looking at writing across the board. Could a student be competent in writing in science, but they really struggle in literature? Absolutely, right? Whether it's because of interest in the content area, or they just aren't good at really the reading of literature, but they really are good with technical manuals or scientific content. So that's a really neat shift that they're going to be working towards. And they base their work on Karen Hess's cognitive rigor matrix. It's a really neat kind of rubric that is very much what we built our SAU-wide rubric off of, was something very similar. So I think in short, what Concord is doing is reinforced in the things that we're doing. So we're going to be even better preparing our students as we continue to shift our students into this competency-based world and getting them to realize that it's not about where you score, it's about how much you've learned. Some other changes. Concord High School is starting to look at reassessment as an expectation. They've even hired a staff member, a certified staff member as a flex teacher who's going to support recovery and any kind of reassessment. So if a student needs to reassess, they can work with a certified teacher in the content area, and then they can go and work with that teacher so that they can reassess and improve their outcomes and their learning. I love this next part. They've moved away, or they're moving away, from the formative versus summative issue. If you've heard about this at all, and Nate, you'll be particularly aware, summative assessments are typically seen as the end of learning, right? So consider it like an autopsy, as opposed to formative assessment, which is like a checkup. And over time, that system has gotten skewed where people look at it and say, well, I can score my summative work because it's the end of learning. But they also score the formative work, which is supposed to be for learning. So they're supposed to be corrective when you're assessing formatively. They're moving away from that, and we're even looking in some of our districts at moving away from that, because it's not about formative and summative. It's not about what counts and what percentage it counts for and how much it counts or how many times you weigh it. What it's about is looking at the best evidence of learning. Deerfield does a really nice job with that, with a body of evidence, and I think we want to highlight that even more as we get away from these arguments about summative and formative. And last, they're using work-study habits, and they're incorporating that into their eligibility for athletics and extracurriculars. We have, I think, 2 districts in our SAU that already do that, and that's really awesome because I think it takes you from looking at yourself as a student athlete or a student performer or whatever it might be, and you've also got to be a good citizen. And that's part of our mission, part of our vision is to grow good citizens. People who are doing what they're supposed to do, finding their way in the world, and really being a good citizen. So I like that as well. Now I'll get on to middle school redesign. This work is based on a NELM's recommendation that was made, I believe, 3 years ago, to move to true teams, all right? The way that the budget works and the size of the school itself, we're able to have 3-person teams. It's not perfect. It's not necessarily what we want. We'd love to have straight middle school 4-person teams where every content area is represented. That wouldn't pass the budget, right? Because you'd need I think 2 new teachers, 3 new teachers, something like that. So given what we have and the teaching staff that we have, the decision was made to have all teachers teach social studies. It's not perfect. That being said, I will say the teachers, since we've brought this up, have been really intrigued. They have been excited. They have been collaborative. They have been working with their peers. Additionally, we have on 2 of the 3 teams a certified social studies teacher. We have an assistant principal who's in charge of the middle school who is a social studies guy. We have a building full of content people. With how collaborative this staff is, with the work that they've already begun to do, and with the interest level that we've been able to garner as an administrative team, I am fully confident that these folks are creating, because they're doing the work now, really involved, thoughtful, and engaging, more than anything, engaging units of study around important topics and content in social studies. So, had I given this back on March 17th or 18th when I was supposed to, I would have told you the plan and what we were going to do. We've already enacted a lot of that plan because these teachers are so dedicated and your administrative staff is so dedicated to the work that needs to be done for kids that we've already begun our unit design work. So we worked with the certified social studies staff, one of whom is no longer here. But we worked as a team to figure out what are these most important concepts? What are the units that we want to focus on? What can't we miss? And we also looked at, again, the C3 hub. We've been looking at a lot of different our competencies as well. And what people have done is they've gone out and they've really reflected and said, where would I be best suited to teach? And what unit or what units would I be most suited to teach, or what topics? And so what they've done is they've chosen those topics. They are right in line with what's been taught in social studies here for a long time. And I think because of the way these 3-person teams are going to work, it's actually going to allow teachers to explore a little bit more and to really make, I think, the connections that, is it Kuna? Cooney, I'm sorry, that she brought up earlier about being able to bring in discussions about what's happening in our world right now, because they are so important and we can't ignore them. So when we focus on our new model, as I mentioned before, we want to pilot a 4 competency model: geography, history, civics and government, and economics. What we're trying to do is really engage students through thought-provoking, enduring understandings and essential questions. In particular, questions that are provocative, questions that really get kids to think about not just what happened in the past, in history, or in one society, but to think about modern day and what's happening in the world right now. And we're vetting those, we are validating those as teachers create them, and we're going to be continuing that work throughout the summer. Our goal is to develop inquiry skills in students, using C3, using authentic performance assessments, and helping students see the nuances of social studies. I really can't express how much that's been the focus of our work. We want kids thinking like social scientists. We want them thinking like citizens of the world who are open-minded and who see more than maybe what they were taught in their household when they were 3 years old. We want them to research. We want them to explore. We want them to develop their own thoughts and opinions based on unbiased research. And that's what these teachers are bringing to the table. I just said that, so we'll keep moving. So why is this relevant? This is where we start putting the pieces together. We've been receiving teacher feedback at the middle school level that kids weren't doing their work. They weren't doing homework. They weren't completing things. They were not getting things done on time, and there wasn't this sense of urgency, or they didn't care about their learning. And I say that kind of crassly, so I apologize. It's not those aren't their words, but you get my point, right? That kids weren't taking the responsibility for their learning the way that they should. So Patty and I came in. Superintendent Sherman and I came in. This is on video. And we met with all of the middle school kids. and we talked about how important it was for us to hear their voices, to better understand why they weren't doing some work, or if they weren't doing it, why they weren't doing it, what their perceptions were on competency-based education, and why they're here. I'm going to show you those results shortly. But really, we had a wanted focus, right? We all, both students and teachers and administration and communities and parents, want engaged kids, right? We want our kids to be successful. We want our kids to grow and to learn. And so we really just need to hone in on what matters, and that's what we've been doing by looking at this data, and as we've been building our units. We've specifically worked through a process so that it's all about engaging kids, giving them something important, hands-on, and really engaging to do. Because I think it's important to note that times are a-changing. It's our first in-person meeting in how long? That's going to impact kids, as is the social reckoning that was spoken of earlier as well. But when kids change and society changes, we need to change as well. We need to meet our kids where they're at. We no longer live in this world where kids are supposed to be sitting in rows. We know they don't learn best that way. When they're listening to a teacher and expected to spit back information and regurgitate it. We know that they work best. These are Deerfield kids, by the way, doing a math unit, hands-on. I think they were doing volume and building out some cues. But they do better. They're more engaged here. Their minds are able to grasp concepts more deeply. They can apply things in a real and authentic way. And that's what we're trying to do. The student perception data that I'm going to show you actually really echoes this, and I think it's really important to note that these are the same types of student perceptions that we've seen across the SAU and across the state and the nation. These are not new things. They're not Deerfield issues. They just happen to be here as well. So this is our first piece of data. This is comprehensive. It's broken down by grade level, but we would be here all night if we went into that, and I don't think anybody wants that. So overall, do you believe that competency-based education means you can pass even if you do not do your work? There is a small percentage of kids, 12%, who would think, yeah, that's a misconception, right? You've got to do your work. In fact, I would argue competency-based education is more demanding because you have to provide evidence. And this 12% of kids might be some of the students who are not providing that evidence. This one I thought was pretty interesting. What's more important to you? Achieving the highest score possible or learning and growing every day? Almost 28% of students at the middle school level really think it's about a score. School isn't about scores. School is about learning and growing. We need to shift this, and we need that number to get a little smaller. We need more kids recognizing that they're here to learn, not that they're here to get an A. Because what does that mean? We've gone through that before, so I won't delve back in. Have you ever been on probation? You see that blue wedge keeps getting bigger, all right? 38.5% of students have been on probation. We delved into like why and what happened. We'll show you that in a sec. But that's a pretty alarming number. Like, think about it. This means that 38% of kids, for some reason, are on academic probation and spent a period of time there. So that, to me, it's a little alarming. And when we look at this next slide, we can dig in a little bit more. So why were you on probation? This one alarms me. Missing a single problem or a small portion of an assignment. This is what happens when you give kids, I want you to do page 46 in the book, numbers 1 through 49 odd, right? Same problem, just different numbers. This is what happens. Kids get bored. They don't see the point in continuing and doing it all. If you're not doing a single problem or just a few problems, but you clearly showed that you get the concept and you've been able to show that time and time again, why is that assignment as important? So as we've been building these units, one of our focuses for teachers is really on, let's think about the big ideas. If kids can present evidence that they get those big ideas and they're progressing, why are they doing all these little tasks that they might not have to do because they get it? So this blue, it alarms me, and I'd like to see that shrink. If assignments are focused on big ideas and kids aren't doing those, missing most of an assignment, that's a viable reason to be on probation. If you haven't shown that you know what you're doing, if you haven't proven competence, and you're not doing what you're supposed to do, that's alarming. Or I'm sorry, that's where we want to hold kids accountable. And then again, missing small portions of many assignments. I wonder, as you know, in my role, I wonder how much of this is related to that. Is it just because kids they get it, they don't need to continue doing it because they've shown that they get it time and time again? So I wonder. I don't know, but I wonder. So why do you think some students are not doing their work? Remember, this is a student perception. So we ask students this question. The first one is confused. They were confused. There was unclear expectations. I just read a study yesterday or Monday all about how unclear expectations cause students to procrastinate. And if they procrastinate on a homework assignment, it means they might not do it. So I find that one pretty interesting. Students perceive them or their peers as lacking motivation or not caring. This is why the units that we're building have to be built the way they are. And that work in social studies needs to spread back to the other content areas as well. Because if we're building highly thought-provoking units that require students to perform and demonstrate their learning in an authentic way, something that means something to them, then we know that students are going to care about their work. If we give them some level of choice, whereby they're allowed to choose how they present, or even what in a certain topic, right? Do I have to read the Scarlet Letter? And it's a high school text, sorry, high school guy. Do I have to read the Scarlet Letter, or can I read the Grapes of Wrath and prove similar points? Whatever it is. When we give students choice, we know that they care. And that also makes them more motivated. When we give them authentic tasks, things that are meaningful to them, telling them to go out and produce something, to build something, to create a video and show something, whatever it might be, that interests them, their motivation comes. So that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to build all those things into these social studies units and have that flood out back into the other content areas. This was interesting too. What are your top motivators? We've got a lot of kids who are self-motivated in the school. That's a great sign. All right? So 38 kids perceive themselves or their peers, the reason they do work, as they're self-motivated. There were a lot of kids who don't like the idea of probation. It scares them, they don't want to get it. And I think it's good, it speaks to the town. They're afraid of their parents. They don't want to get in trouble at home. And they don't want to get in trouble here. They want to get good grades. They want to engage in extracurriculars. They love incentives and field trips. So again, you're talking about things that motivate them. I think you've got kids who are really insightful on why they do what they do. And I don't want to miss out on that. So what are the things that the school can do to support kids? These came right from kids, and when I tallied the data, I looked for common themes. And the one that popped right to the top was kids wanted more one-on-one time. They wanted better explanation of assignments, or more explanation. They felt they weren't quite ready, so it goes back to that unclear expectations piece we talked about, where a big chunk of kids wasn't doing work because they didn't know what to do. They want more hands-on, fun learning opportunities. They're kids, right? Who doesn't want that? I'm an adult and I want that. I'd love to have fun at work. If we're not having fun, like what's the point? We need kids to love what they're doing in school. So again, building that into our units. Next, more in-school time to complete work. I think that speaks back to better explanations, but they want support, they need support. Even if it's just somebody telling them, yep, you got it. I think that would go a long way. And then last, balancing assignments across subject areas. Kids felt overwhelmed and overloaded. Patty and I looked at some of that data, and she was, I think I'm safe to say you were a bit shocked at how many kids said anxiety. They feel anxious about how much work I'm getting, because they might get 2 big assignments that come together at one point, or maybe more. I think by shifting to this 3-team person model, one, we now have teachers who are in the same room at the same time all the time. They're planning together, they're working together. They're not, you don't have one person with one team and not with another, or whatever. These people are working closely, they can talk about it. Plus, the fact that they'll all have a course in social studies means that they can balance or even pull together competencies. Again, writing and some of those social studies competencies will fit really nicely together. So we hope to be able to manage that a little bit better, not assigning so much, so that kids can really delve deep, really dig in, and not feel overwhelmed. So I love the fact that as we've had these conversations, I know some of them have happened at the board level with administration, some of them have happened just with administration, but the school's already adding academic labs. Right, to be able to have more in-school time with kids, to explain things, to support them, to give them answers. We're developing these authentic hands-on units in social studies. We continue to shift in CBE to better communicate what's been done, and how much a kid has grown and how much where they need support. And I think it's really important that we are in line with Concord High School, and they're in line with us now. So I think those are all really important factors. Questions from the board? Maybe.
I have a bunch.
What's that?
I have a bunch.
Okay.
If other people have them, jump in. There's a lot of, as you pointed out, a lot of connected things happening here. You mentioned early on the idea of calculation conversations about how we calculate these scores and what shows up in the grade book. And then you came back later on to talk about grading formatives versus summatives. And I guess that's sort of, hopefully those are two ends of the same question. It's kind of like, how are you weighting these different grades, but then are you grading formatives more, summatives more, and...
Right, so it comes back to that point about evidence,
yeah.
Right? And so what do we as a teacher decide is the best evidence of learning? If we gave a traditional test, whether it's formative or summative, I don't care, I'm not going to call it anything. Yeah. But if we gave a traditional test and we gave a project and we gave a bunch of other assignments, a bunch of classwork, a bunch of in-person conversations where we can gauge learning, what's the best evidence? And why don't we count that best evidence where we know this kid gets it. Wow, they really could discuss the nuances of a piece of content or a topic or skill. Or wow, they showed me in person. They bombed the test, right? It's not their best mode. So I'm gonna count that evidence because it's the best evidence of learning. Whether it's testing, anxiety, or whatever it might be. So it's about evidence. But the calculation still has to come in, right? We still have to make a determination of competence at some point. Okay. But the hope is to get rid of that formative and summative and what's weighted as what or counts as what.
Okay.
Yeah, to follow up on that, because I written down the same question. I guess I'm still a little unclear, because you're talking, we got to figure out the mean, median, mode, we're looking at the best way to do it. Who is that we? Is it you and the administration? I mean, is there a very prescribed process that you're looking at, and this is how districts all across the country do it?
Yeah, so one of the big things is we're trying to steer clear of the mean, the average, right? Because we know that averaging harms kids. It harms them less in a 4-point scale than it would in a 100-point scale. But suffice to say, if a student got 3 4s and a 0, that significantly impacts a score. Whatever their score might be in the end. So what we're say your question again.
So I guess the question is, how are you guys determining the
Yeah.
appropriate way to roll those all out?
So we're kind of exploring that still, and like I said, super early in the discussion. I'm really just to keep you aware. But knowing Deerfield and the way our SAE works, we're really collaborative. We actually talk about these things in our summer and winter retreats with principals. We try and find a level of alignment, while at the same time making sure we're doing what's best for our kids, and best preparing them for whatever's next. So I guess to most directly answer your question, it will be collaborative with the administration. Okay. Yeah, Zach.
So, one of the things, and this has been a recurring theme we've discussed a number of times, and you had a slide about the reason kids were on probation and having to do with homework not
Yep.
being completed, and it's most certainly been a hot button issue with a lot of families. And the point that a lot of families bring is, my child didn't understand one problem on their math homework. You pick on that. Why are they on probation? They were able to do 95% of the work.
Yep.
How do we, as a school, work so that we're not penalizing? Because my fear is I think we're disenfranchising some students sometimes. And so are you working, or as a staff, are we working on a way to not disenfranchise those students because they didn't understand a problem, but clearly understand the subject matter?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to those conversations with teachers, which we started back in February. And we showed them this data and we said, we need to move away from a system that penalizes. It's all about, control, if you will. Do all the work or else your grade will suffer. No, it's show me that you get it, and when you do, just make sure that you can show me that continuously, at various times. I think teachers, when we showed them this data, recognized that they have a part to play in finding solutions. I think it's a point that we're going to have to continue to address, and I think we're going to have to continue to really teach and inform, because this is a nuance. This is different than it used to be. A lot of the teachers that are working now weren't trained in this way. They were trained, to give homework every night because that's what you're supposed to do. But we now know that that's not necessarily what's best for every child. So I think we're going to have to continue to work on that. And the nice part is that's a part of our work, and it's part of what Brian does. Heading up the middle school, and I love the relationships that I formed in the middle school this year. Have really started to blossom. To the point where our virtual conversations over the last couple of weeks were just a hoot. They were really just great work, and they were fun, and teachers were excited. And so I think by me being able to start getting in more, I can press that, because that's my job, right, is to press that issue and to say, hold on, why are you giving 0 credit because a kid missed one item on an assignment? That's not fair. Did they get the concept? And to be able to remind people of that. So I think it's all of our jobs, but I think we're now building in the structure and the supports to be able to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think we probably want to think about that a lot more and more formally, but thank you for bringing it up. Gigi.
My question, and you addressed it a little bit, but I was wondering, what was the most, do you think, what is the most important piece of professional development that teachers need? Do they, is it help with developing, project-based units? Is it, what is that? And do we have that lined up for, do we have a plan in place for that coming up?
Yeah, so that's what we're doing. So I'm working, for example, with the 7th grade on July 10th. We're going to be here. We're going to be working on their social studies units. 6th grade, they're already off and running, and 8th grade, we're trying to come up with some dates as needed, as they dig in. Everybody needed a break. That came across very clear. So we're building that in, and just by creating units using the Understanding by Design framework, where we're creating these essential questions and enduring understandings, by nature, we're already focusing at a deeper level. It's not about, hey, I'm going to create this worksheet today, and hopefully it'll get me where I want to be. No, it's really purposeful. And when we get into, the backwards design model and the stage 3 component of that, which is all about making sure that we consistently, loop back around, check in with kids, make sure that we're hooking them a lot, focusing on those essential questions and enduring understandings. It helps to move us away from how many did you get right. Let me look at that worksheet, right? It's more about, and again, the authentic performance tasks are not about that spit back what I told you. When you ask a student a truly essential question, their answer, you should be able to ask them that on day 1, and all you want to see is a different answer at the end of that unit. You want to see that they've grown. And part of that, when you build in a project or a performance, is they still might have the wrong answer. But what was the process? What did they do? What was their inquiry like? Did they ask the right questions? Did they delve in the right way? Did they understand the research component, and maybe they just found the wrong research, right? Not to get the answer I want, but research that wasn't valid or wasn't good, which again has learning involved in that as well. So I think it's inherent in what we're trying to do, and again, the idea is to let that grow out as this work starts. And again, I think it's really important to say the teachers were really excited. They were pretty hungry. And that makes me excited.
Oh, great. I have one.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
My other question was, do we have a plan to separate out work-study habits and competencies in terms of how we report out on them?
So I don't know if you guys do. I know all of our other schools do. I think you do, because so the beautiful thing about Alma is it separates any kind of content area.
Okay.
And if you have your work study practices are in your class, but they're listed separately.
Okay.
So I'd have to look at one of your report cards specifically, but they show up and whatever your I think here it's habits of learning, right, is what the title is called. But so your habits of learning are going to show up distinctly from your learning targets across the board. So we can see, did Gigi do really well in her math class in her responsibility or, taking ownership, but maybe she didn't do so well in ELA. Is it a learning issue? Does she not mesh well with the teacher? Is there some sort of a butting of heads, or what is it? And we can at least look at that. But yeah, they are separate. I'd have to look deeper at Deerfield specifically to be able to answer that a little bit better.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I don't have any kids anymore, so I haven't seen it before.
Oh, you have it, I'll get you a copy.
Oh,
You can take mine, by the way. I need to get rid of them for a little while.
A couple months would be nice.
Just 2 or 3,
I
yeah.
have them, they're just not little.
I do have little ones. Really relive sometime. Hey.
Thank you for all this. This is great information. I appreciate the work that you've done on this. So another question was about the grading by competency comment, which was, for instance, you used the example of writing social studies or science or whatever it is. Have we gotten to the point, let's say in Alma, or into this discussion where teachers are looking at, I think you said it in terms of Concord, are we there yet where we can have different teachers looking at writing as a competency rather than a subject?
They can do it.
Yeah.
They haven't delved into it, to my knowledge.
Somehow.
Okay, so some have. And that goes across the board in our SAU. Not a lot of teachers, because some people aren't really confident saying, well, I'm the science teacher, and I keep going to science because that's what you do, so
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah.
But I'm the science teacher, I don't want to give the kid a writing grade.
Yeah.
So they get, I think, a little scared, like that self-efficacy as a teacher in their ability to say, no, I know what good writing looks like in science, and I am confident. It shows up as an ELA competency,
Right.
but it's under your science class. So teachers have the ability to do it right now. A few teachers in Allenstown have done that, and I think in Epsom as well, they've delved into that a little bit. And Chichester has had to because of the small nature of their staff,
Okay.
and people who co-teach things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a question for Brian, I believe, but I mean, is that something that you're working with the teams to, get that comfort level working within Alma?
Well, part of the
situation with this is we haven't had teams. You know, we've had 2 teams and one too big of a team with the 7-8 team. So with 3-person teams at each grade level, I think this is something we'll definitely be looking at as the year comes forward. So it'll take time to work on. Obviously, as with anything with competency-based grading, it just takes time and practice. But being able to have all those team members in the room at the same time is a necessity, and we haven't been able to do that in the past. So this will allow for more work to be done going down this road. And it's something we've been pushing for. I mean, I've been here, this is my 9th year, and when I arrived, we had, it's like, the teaming was crazy. You know, it was like we had Kira teaching 2 sections of science, 7th grade science 1 year, and then Ellen teaching 1 section of it, and then the following year they flip it. Ellen would teach 2 and Kira would teach 1. So now we went to this 2-team situation, and there was more positives and negatives, but there's still negatives. And by making it 3-person teams, we're hoping that we'll just, again, see more positives than negatives as we go forward. So, I mean, this is a long time coming to get this to happen. And it's come full circle because it used to be like this, like back a long time ago. I think you went here. So you had solid teams. Like you had distinct, Paul Yurjo was your science teacher and probably your social studies teacher or something like that. So, so I'm not sure, but I'm just saying, but they used to, so it's come almost full circle again, but it's taken all the growth and the growing pains of where we're at now. And for the most part, I mean, our population keeps ticking up, but it's still manageable. So where before, this year, I mean, the 7-8 team, they had 110, 112 kids, papers to grade. Next year, they'll only have 45. So it goes back to that talking point of, I can know my student better, I can spend more time with them, I can go over the instructions more. We're going to have the academic labs 3 times. Each kid will receive 3 academic labs over a 6-day rotation. So all these things are just allowing for what kids want and what hopefully will alleviate some of these growing pains at home, like the nuances of I did my homework, but you didn't do your homework, all that stuff that you're about to walk into. So exactly about to walk into. So we're hoping that this will just eliminate so many other negatives that bring out more positives.
So I think that we're filming this obviously for the benefit of a lot of people in the community to be able to see as well. But is it possible for you to kind of give a breakdown of how we were in the middle school and how the new schedule changes from where we were? Just if you can, 5 minutes of information. I know we've talked about it in the past, but let's put it all in one place so it's in a central location.
Yeah.
So
I'll put that next to the
You wanted to say it now.
I want you
You're
to
asking
I
us
want
to-
it now.
I'll do it with the I see the side there.
Can we talk about it now for a few minutes, just on how you rechanged the schedule and
Oh yeah. So
yeah.
essentially,
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
that's all right. I'm used to it.
It's your stuff.
Coming forward, we're going to the whole entire school is going to a 6-day rotation. So what that allows, it allows more flexibility within the general scope of the scheduling in a given grade level. And we'll stick to middle school because that's what the main focus is on. So what that allows is, by having the teams, it allows, if I'm the social studies teacher and I'm doing a project, it allows me to knock on the door next door and say, hey, I need 10 more minutes. All right, and then that teacher knocks on the door. And I've been in that situation before as a teacher. So being on a team allows for things like that flexibility to happen. Allows you to have that day to say, all right, today we're going to do a massive project outside with the entire 7th grade. So all these things, the scheduling is allowing us to have this more flexibility, and the only way to have that is to have these teams. And what we've created, and it's kind of hard without a visual, the schedule essentially has it's an access in the middle, and it's our IAs. So you have your PE, art, music, etc. in the middle, and that stays the same every single day. We've added another one, which will be the academic labs, the wellness, and world language. So those 2 things are solid in the part of the day. The rest of the schedule rotates however the teachers want it to rotate. A lot of them are, actually all of them are doing a waterfall schedule essentially. So A day and D day, you'll have math first period, but the other day, other E, F, G, not E, that's G, C, E, whatever, will have math in the middle of the day or toward the end of the day. So it's allowing for all this flexibility when it comes to the scheduling. The academic labs, as I said, is 3 built in throughout the week. And one of them, for the 8th graders, we're actually a bit of an incentive. Each 8th grader will have the opportunity that if they're all caught up in all their work, and they're not on probation or anything like that, they'll have that first period of the day at a 1 6-day rotation to, it's kind of like almost like a high school level incentive. They get that as a free period. So they can go to the gym, they can go to the music room, they can go to the library, and they'll be supervised. But it's kind of like a reward for, all right, I'm all caught up on my work. I'm responsible enough to go to the gym and just shoot some baskets with my friend who's with me as well. So we've built in all these like little things to allow them to have a little bit more freedom, but also have the support when they need the support. So again, it's a little hard and tricky to put out a schedule in front of me. So you're really on the spot. Trying to think what else.
You should have expected this.
Trying to think of what else with the schedule that. As I said before, 7th and 8th grade will share an IA, so that's been really done really well by our IA teachers. 5th and 6th is splitting this year, only because of population size. It has nothing to do with the blend. The teachers, actually, the IA teachers really enjoyed having both those groupings together. So that's happening as well.
And you're doing that 6-day week, or that 6-day rotation, sorry. It's going to be K through 8.
K through 8.
And it's going to just be applicable, and that gives you common planning time on every grade level, or just in the middle school?
On every single grade level.
So every grade level now has common planning time to collaborate, work together.
Yeah, 5 days a week.
Five days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming that the planning time probably flows through the schedule, or is the planning time for every grade level the same block every day?
It'll be the same block every day. So like for 7th and 8th grade, their IAs will be at the end. Usually, your common planning time is when the students are off into their specials or IAs, depending on where you're at in school. Middle school kids call it IAs, younger kids call it specials. So for instance, 7 and 8, their planning period is the last period of the day every day next year. So that allows the teachers to all get together during that period, allows to set a time for guidance to come in. So guidance can be like, all right, every A day we're meeting with guidance at this time. Every B day we're meeting with the math specialist, and every C day we're meeting with the literacy specialist or reading specialist. So it allows for all that built in. It allows for the specialists all to have a consistent schedule too, because that's a big piece of it, is when that was a big problem too, because you would have, all right, on Monday they can meet at 8:30, but on Tuesday they're not meeting till 2. So for a specialist that's hard, because then you can't be like, all right, I can meet with my first graders here for 30 minutes, but then I got to split and go to this meeting. So it allows for consistency across the whole grade level when it comes to any kind of specialist. So scheduling has been a huge undertaking in the last few years too. And since I've been here, that's been my mission, is to get an awesome schedule. And I think we've had
One more day a week.
What's that?
Additional days.
That's it. Or another 3 hours of the school day. So,
We also had an entire team of teachers that worked on this. We all, the administration, and Lisa McConnell was there. We had some middle school teachers, we had some elementary teachers, just working on what are some best practices we can put in place for an awesome schedule. And so Brian kicked it out.
And it's most certainly, it's a wholesale change to the way we've been doing it, which is, unfortunately, we haven't had the last 3 months to start explaining it to students.
Right. Or parents.
So, it's just important to try to get the message across as much as possible, because this is going to be a change. If your kid was here, in December, it's going to feel different.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can definitely, and we'll put something else out too, a narrative piece, either a video or something. And it's kind of hard, if I was just to give you this schedule as a parent and just say, hey, this is what your 6th graders are going to have next year, you'd be overwhelmed, and you probably, you can sit down and look at it and get an idea eventually, but you probably a little freak out moment at first to see it. So.
Fair enough. Do we have additional questions? Nate?
Back to Chris, to follow up on the last one, which was about the idea that a competency such as writing is seen throughout the student's day. I would think that I have heard that in different middle schools, if you were to intentionally design this kind of system, it makes sense from some perspectives to make, for that very reason, ELA be the shared class that every teacher is teaching, as opposed to social studies.
I mean, there are certainly models where that's the case. I think yes, I've seen models like that.
So I guess the questions that I've been hearing or fall along the lines of, is this the end all? I mean, obviously it might be changing again in a few years. This is just sort of, we're working towards perfection here, and we never get there, which is kind of the other point that we've heard tonight. But let's say for the foreseeable future, is this kind of our goal, where now every teacher is doing social studies, or is this more kind of like a sort of an adjustment given default budget, given things like that, and it makes more sense from sort of a long-term view to say, well, actually ELA embedded in all of the sections and having a social studies teacher on each team makes more sense? Or I don't know if you can look ahead that far into the future, but
yeah, I really haven't thought in those terms, and I think that's probably a wider discussion, with the school.
Jump in too.
Yeah,
A piece of this was teacher feedback. We came to we had all our teachers, our middle school staff, in a room together, and we went through. This wasn't like a split decision. This was a decision with every staff member in the middle school, including our IA teachers, wellness teacher, world language teacher. What is the best way to get this information across? And we approached them. We said, do we do that? Do we do that? And the majority of the teachers said they were not comfortable teaching ELA. For the fact that it's almost like you have to be, with the writing piece and the reading piece, it's almost, our ELA teachers are almost practically reading specialists in a way. So, and so when we floated the idea of social studies, almost unanimously, everyone agreed that social studies was they would be so much more comfortable doing that, and they were more invested with that piece. As Chris said, they all picked their units. And so one of our teachers said, I can't do civil rights. I'm too passionate about it, and I will be biased, extremely biased. It's not fair to my students to be that way. So they took a step back. And they said at first they wanted that because they're passionate about it, but then they realized this is not a good thing for me to be this, go into that role. So they took a step back and said they'd be better off doing something like microeconomics, where numbers based driven, which is more up their alley when it came to what they were teaching. So, so they put a lot of time and effort into this thought process, and again, this was done over probably several months. Continued conversations around this whole piece. I mean, we started this conversation 2 years ago, so it's been lively and conversation ever since. So, and it is exciting to see how excited they are to do this. So, and everybody was on board. They see the value of the teaming, and they see the value of the social studies piece, and they want to do it justice. So,
great.
Any additional questions? Okay.
It's not so much a question. It comes from a comment you made, or your first question about the other sort of issues that maybe don't necessarily directly fall under the competency-based umbrella, but are connected, such as probation and such as homework, which we've talked about a little bit here tonight. And as I kind of look ahead to the future in the next few months, obviously we don't really know yet what the fall is going to look like. And I feel like a lot of the spring has been lost in terms of work to kind of work towards this. It hasn't been lost. It sounds like you've been doing a lot of great work behind the scenes, which is appreciated. But when our kids come back in the fall, and even if it's not in the fall, maybe it's December, maybe it's, I don't know when, but hopefully things return to normal at some point. And when we get back to normal, I am concerned that we have all of these sort of great ideas and a lot of good work. I feel like we're a little bit behind the 8 ball now in terms of how we could be looking back at the some of the processes for the school. So I'm thinking about homework, I'm thinking about probation, I'm thinking about those sorts of practices that are in the school. And so I want to throw this out here, and we'll kind of see where it goes. But I'd like to make a motion along these lines, and I had it kind of pre-written. I would like to move that we ask Mr. Motika to work collaboratively with DCS admin and teachers as appropriate to look critically at our middle school handbook from the CBE perspective, make appropriate updates to the 2020-21 handbook accordingly. And 3, bring proposed handbook updates to the August board meeting for approval. And I can get language to you.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Nate, second by Jeff. Nate, you want to?
Like I said, I'm afraid that we're behind the ball. And this is something that we talked about last fall, or when I say fall, I mean August. We talked about it the year before that. This is, like you said, we've sort of been on this topic every so often, and I don't know that we're at the perfect place that we would like to be. And I'm afraid that we've missed the spring, which I'm sure is when most of the work happens to sort of start envisioning what next year's practices will be. And I think having Ms. Ratika with all the work that you've been doing, I think it would be great to have your, and maybe this was already in the plans, and it sounds like from your conversation, maybe that was already planned, and so maybe it wouldn't be much of a stretch. But to be able to have you on the team to help kind of pick up some of that work that maybe we lost in terms of lost time, that's kind of the idea that I'm thinking.
Can you, so, I mean, the reality of it is the handbook in general, we always seem to catch right around the time we're trying to flip cheeseburgers and open the building.
Yeah, it's about the same day that we start talking about the handbook, right?
Right, I mean, that seems to be a pretty consistently, we get it late in the summer.
That day?
Yeah.
That day.
That day, it's a good
I
day.
smell like a cheeseburger for a weekend, which isn't a bad smell, but isn't a great one. So, I most certainly think it's prudent of us to try to get these things ahead and done and published in advance. You know, for me, homework and some of the grading stuff for competencies is kind of a hot topic. I'm not necessarily up for debating homework at this point, and I can be convinced one way or another. But I think, agree with the context of your motion, which is let's set a deadline. I think the biggest thing for us is that a reasonable request? Yes.
I just want to point out, and I'm not against your idea by any stretch of the imagination, I'm just a little concerned with the way it's framed, because Mr. Motika is not supervised by the school board, so we try to stay away from, you know, the board motion for any employee to do something other than they need to do it, you know,
Right.
it's fine.
Okay.
I think if by consensus we can all agree that that's an important task that needs to happen, and we're happy to all work together to do that.
Okay.
I would be satisfied and happy with that if the board is. I would be more than happy to facilitate that work.
Probably could just withdraw the motion then, and just, that would be a goal for the summer, is to work towards that?
Bring it with a completed for the early August meeting, I think is really what, I mean, I didn't catch the date, but I'm assuming you meant the early August meeting.
Early August is what I was thinking, yeah, have a chance for us to look at it.
Brian and I had been talking about the handbook, knowing that, you know, the goal was to have it done earlier this year, and then this happened.
Yeah, right.
So we let it happen.
Right.
Gigi.
And that's all I wanted to do, I guess then, is to check back in with Kristen and Brian to say, is that a realistic expectation? Because the fear that I have is we don't even know what the heck school is gonna look like. And if it's not gonna look normal, the work that is on the plate is gonna be a logistical madness for that administration to do that. So as much as I am wildly in support of, yes, I want to lay that question to bed myself when we start talking about homework and all that. And I feel good because I feel like some of the things that Chris addressed in it sounds like a paradigm shift has begun to occur. Like this little formative assignment is now not going to keep you on academic probation. It sounds like it's happening. That being said, it probably should be written down in the handbook somehow about how those things translate out. But I am concerned that if school isn't going to look normal, the amount of work that'll be on the plate, and that I think that it might be a pretty big boat. Handbooks sound easy, but they're not.
Right.
So I'm just throwing that out there.
Right. I agree with everything you said, and I don't. If it's not possible, it's not me. But I think that it's a priority, and I would like to have.
I think it's a reasonable objective to have, and I think, if we can see it for the first time, and Jeff, because you keep you're disappearing there, so if you have something, just, I think being able to, if possible, having it in the beginning of August so that the board can review it, so that we can have actually frank and honest and real discussions about it, would be huge. So if we can plan for that, and obviously if circumstances change and we find out that we're not opening a building and we have, we're doing online education again for another 2 or 3 months, obviously there's an understanding of flexibility there. Jeffrey?
I guess the question I have is, in not having a middle schooler, it's tough to say, but, you know, it sounds technically now. Like Gigi said, I'm excited about what Brian and Mr. Motiga are talking about. But at the end of the day, it's like, is it in writing? Is this the policy? You know, we can say all the good things that we want to say. How much does that handbook? You know, I guess I would have assumed that as we shifted our approach, you know, following the competency-based education, that the handbook would follow. And what I'm hearing is it sounds like there's a disconnect there.
I think historically, the handbook, I'd say 85% of the handbook doesn't really ever, I don't say ever changes, but doesn't change much, right? But 15% of it, realistically, is probably takes up all the time in reviewing it and updating it annually. And I think for us as a board is historically, we're looking at it the week before school starts or a couple of days before school starts, and we're at that point looking at it as something that has to be distributed to families and on our website and accessible, and it is the reference for the school year. So I think a big portion of this is we really need more time to be able to look at it, digest it, and again, 85% of it is probably a copy and paste from any given previous year. But that 15% of it, if we're making wholesale changes or if we're changing the way we do things and we're modifying the way we do things, 15% of it should really not contradict what we're trying to do, and it should fall in line with what our current philosophy, task, goal, schedule looks like and all that stuff. And so I think Nate's spot on. Let's just, if we can, if it's feasible and if it can be done, let's try to have it so that we can review it. Fair enough?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you clarify what exactly you're looking, you had said in your...
The key things of my statement here were that I hadn't seen this ahead of time, but I loved what you had here, Chris, and I think it's great. There's a lot of great ideas in there. I love seeing the feedback from the kids. I like getting them involved in this and trying to get a holistic picture about what we're doing here. And I appreciate the ideas, like I said, of the cross-curricular competencies. There's so many cool things that we can be doing. And so I think what we saw in this presentation, where nitpicking one missed math problem, again, we'll keep picking on math. I don't know who started this. I think it was Chris who started.
Math is finite. It's either theoretically it's right or it's wrong. So
right. So when if you're assigned, however many, the example you gave was 40 problems, do the odd ones, and if you missed one, and even if that happens every day for a week, how can that put you on probation? That is, to me, a disconnect between, and I'm sure there's a good answer, but I think, like you were saying, Chris, earlier, that we have a school full of many teachers who and I was like this, and I went through school this way, and so I did teach this way, and I graded this way. But that is not what I think we're saying education is about. I think when we talk about, whether you call it formative or summative, you're talking about the big ideas and the skills, and that's the real stuff. And when kids are faced with a homework that has 40 problems on it, and they miss a few at the end because they had soccer practice or had to go to bed or whatever it is, that should not be a reason for them to be on probation.
Just I don't know if we want to do that at all, but that's not why they're on probation.
No, I'm not saying they are. I know. I'm grossly exaggerating, and I apologize if it feels like I'm throwing you under the bus. My point is that I would like the big picture to match what shows up in the handbook. And if you all agree that it does, then that's fine. But I feel like we've been for years getting different messages from different places.
Part of that work, Nate, I've been doing it at most of our schools now over the last year, has been really aligning their assignments with that holistic rubric that we have in place.
Yeah.
Right? Because it helps you to focus on the depth
Yeah.
got that number correct.
Yeah.
It's about consistency. The words that you see in there is consistent and independent.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get kids to focus on. So it might just be pointed in that direction
Okay.
to get them to really focus in on the rubric language
Yeah.
and to align with that more closely for things like homework.
Yeah.
And that might go a long way.
Okay.
I know it has, like in the math department at PA, we can talk about depth of understanding, even on a, when you're filling out a bunch of algorithm, answers or whatever, equations. But it's gone a long way in shifting their thinking.
Yeah.
So that might be the most appropriate step.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not asking that we reinvent the wheel. I mean, that's not going to happen in 2 months. I recognize that, but some tangible steps in that direction would be great. Sorry.
This is probably, I think this is probably, this may not be the time, but I was just gonna make a statement, because we keep connecting. We're always talking about academic probation and homework, and I think that it would be important for the school to be very clear and understand that homework represents a humongous inequity for our students. And so we really need to think very, very long, hard, and clear about what we really believe about homework. Because many of our students go home and they're fortunate and they've got snacks and parents to encourage them to do homework. And many of our students go home and they have no support for that process. And then to grade them the same on that is grossly unfair. So I'm just laying that out there.
It's actually the best argument I've heard about homework, and I have fought so many times, tooth and nail, and lost about homework over the years. And that was the best statement I've heard about it in 5 years on board.
Good thing we have it recorded.
Guess that's why even though I think it was maybe not the best time, I figured I'd get it recorded for, because I can get my bus on the way home.
I fought tooth and nail with that was,
Everybody?
Yeah, everybody. I lost, but I stood my ground. All right.
All right, I will withdraw my motion if you'll withdraw your second.
Done.
All right.
All right. Okay. Any other questions, comments for Mr. Motika and his presentation? Not seeing any. We did film this presentation so that we can place it up on the Facebook and the interweb and however we do it. So that'll be going up for families and parents to be able to reference and see. Because we are holding this meeting in a socially distanced fashion, we are not going to be recording the rest of the meeting because it would be very difficult to get good audio as well as good video, considering we're all sitting in different corners of the cafeteria. But the minutes will all be published and posted after they're complete. So thank you for watching this if you're watching it at home, and we appreciate it.
I'll turn it off.